Alvin in North Carolina, thanks. You're on with Jim and Matt.
Yes, I had talked to you, Matt, and Jenna a couple weeks ago about the theory of biblical patterns. And Jenna asked me if I had looked in the Quran, at which at the time I had not. And since then, I have looked in the Quran, and that's the reason I called back.
Okay. And what is this theory of biblical patterns, if you could, because I wasn't there for that call?
Oh, okay. Well, very quickly, there's 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1 that are beyond chance and beyond mortal capability. And
real quick,
get there?
Well, my first question is how do you know it's beyond chance? And in what language did you study this?
Math.
Okay, you've done the math.
Different language.
What language?
That's rather curious, because if somebody's done the math and shown what the actual odds are, then if you can do the math, then by definition, it is not beyond chance, because you have to have some chance of it happening, and you've actually calculated how likely it is to happen. So it seems to me disingenuous to say, oh, we did the math and it's beyond chance. That's not accurate.
And did you do it in the original language, or did you do it in English? And if you did it in English, did you do it against all interpretations of the Bible and come up with the exact same answer?
Yeah, I did it. I looked at several different languages, and Matt, you're correct. It's not beyond any chance. It's beyond more than a couple deviations. But
so what you're really saying,
primarily.
So what people are really saying, Alvin, is not that it's beyond chance. It's just that it seems to them that it's incredibly unlikely for this to happen without divine intervention.
Yes, or ET, or some higher intelligence.
Can you give us? So you've said
beyond Earth.
You said both previous week and this week that there were 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, there's lots of different ways of looking at Genesis 1:1. You can look at the values and the places, and okay.
So which version of the Bible should I be looking at for us to talk about the patterns in Genesis 1:1?
The original Hebrew.
The original Hebrew.
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the original Hebrew? Because you'll be the only person on the planet who has an original copy of anything in the Bible.
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's been through a lot of iterations, but I'm basically just talking about the first verse. So
sure,
in various places in the Bible, there are questions of which letter, but I'm just talking about the first verse. It's only the first 7 words.
Yeah, so 7 words. How would you determine how many different ways those 7? How do you get 100 patterns in 7 words? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, you can look. It's at the theoryofbiblicalpatterns.com. I mean, it's things like pi, e, and alpha, and the number of words, the number of letters. If you take there's 28 letters, so if you take the 28 places, you find it in pi, and now a lot of it has to do with the factors of the value, which is 37 and 73. That's where a lot of the patterns come from.
What was the website? Because I
found
a theory of biblical patterns, but not. What was the website?
Theoryofbiblicalpatterns.com.
The theory of biblical.
Well, that doesn't even come up in the first level,
patterns.
First couple of for.
Okay, that redirects me to the BibleInTheBible.com.
Yeah, it's the same website. Well, okay, now at the top, there's just 20 verses that says there are patterns in the Bible. But if you click on, well, I don't have it in front of me, but if you click on patterns.
Is this your website?
100 patterns.
Is this your website? Because I noticed there's something here that says Atheist Experience 10/4/2020, and atheist is spelled wrong. Is that just another pattern of Atheist Experience to spell it wrong?
Oh, no, I guess I made a mistake when I wrote it. Yeah. No, that's just that. Okay. 2 weeks ago when I talked to you, I added a web page just reflecting what I had found in the last 2 weeks. And if you click on that link, that's what you'll find. It just had, there's like a couple hundred classic books that I've looked at, and the Quran, and in Arabic and English and so forth. Well, all my results are on that page. If you click that link, that's what you'll find. But I didn't know I misspelled it.
Yeah, every single time.
Yeah.
You've misspelled the word atheist
well.
every single time that I see. It's on the link, you know, but I'm not, you know, this isn't a spelling exam, except that if you're saying that there's 7 words and 100 patterns, I'm still trying to figure out. I looked at the website. I've listened to what you say. I don't mean to be a dick, but the website is a confusing hot mess that doesn't present any information clearly, because within the first page, you say, Dr. Roger Penrose said the universe is fine-tuned to 10 to the 10th to the 123rd, greater than 10 to the power of a googolplex, a multi. All of that is true and has nothing to do with patterns or anything else. It's like you found some big numbers and made decisions that, ooh, you found a pattern that seems like it's unlikely. I'm trying to figure out what's the pattern.
Oh, well, you're right. There's other stuff on the website, but
okay, I'm looking at Genesis 1:1. You say there's 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1. Please describe one pattern, and then if that's clear, describe a second pattern so I can know what the heck you mean. I genuinely, I'm not trying to be awful. I have no idea what you mean by saying there's 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1. There's 7 words in Genesis 1:1.
Well, okay, the easiest ones are there's 7 words. That's okay. 3 and 7 are like the most important digits.
Says who?
7 is by far the most.
Says who?
Well, it's in the Bible. I mean,
I don't care what the Bible says.
most
If the Bible says 7 is important, that doesn't mean that 7 is important.
No, but you find 3 and 7 together, 37 and 73.
Yes, you find 3s and 7 all over the place. I remember being in church and having the pastor talk about how my body is repeatedly divided into thirds. I have a head, I have a torso, I have legs. My arm has a hand, a forearm, and an upper arm. My fingers have 3 joints. You can find 3 all over the place. But you know what else you can do? You can find 2, because I have a left half and a right half. I have a left ear and a right ear, a left eye and a right eye, a left nostril and a right nostril, a left arm and a right arm. You can find any sort of number, especially the smaller ones that are likely to repeat, almost anywhere. I want to know give me a pattern in 1:1, and why we should care about it.
Well, probably one of the maybe easier to understand is the one I mentioned before, pi e and alpha. There's a 1 in 100,000 chance that any given number would be any 5-digit number, and Genesis 1:1 creates pi, which is 1 in 100,000.
How does Genesis 1:1 create pi?
Well, let's see. The letters times the factor of the letters over the words times the factor of the words, or the multiple of the words. So that's the equation you use. But you get the same thing.
When you said you get pi, do you get 3.14, or do you get 3.14 that just keeps on going forever? And I forget what the next 1,000 digits are, although people have calculated it out to 10,000. When you say it creates pi, have you checked to the same degree of accuracy that people who have calculated pi out to thousands of digits, or are you just saying it's 3.14? Because that's not pi.
No, it's just it's the first 5 digits, so it's 1 in 100,000.
That's not pi.
And the same thing where John
3.14 or 3.14 to the first 5 digits is not pi.
Correct. It is an approximation of pi,
but it is not pi.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But so let's say that Genesis 1:1.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's go ahead and you and I can agree, Alvin, that if you take the words or the letters in Hebrew letters in Genesis 1:1, which are also numbers, that you can perform some sort of mathematical manipulation on it and wind up with pi to the first 5 digits of pi, right? That's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Now, so irrespective of whether we can do that anywhere else, which I would argue that we absolutely can, and even when you look at it and you're like, oh, it's that to 100,000 or 1 in 100,000. What does that mean? To find that you can do some sort, like the Bible doesn't tell you what mathematical calculation to do. And so if somebody sits around with a bunch of numbers, like a random string of 10 characters, 10 numbers, and a goal that they're trying to get to. Have you ever seen the show Countdown from the UK?
No.
It's brilliant. And I would recommend that when you go watch Countdown, you should start with the regular Countdown and do not watch 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown. But Countdown is a game that's played in kind of 2 rounds. One of them, you get a sequence of English language consonants and vowels, and you have to create the longest anagram out of that random assortment that you can. The other one is that you pick a handful of a handful of numbers of different values, and then a random number pops up on the screen, and you have to, through calculation, combine the numbers that you were given to reach the total that is at the top of the screen as close as you can. Now, there are some occasions where it just can't be done, that there's no amount of calculation that you can use given this, strictures and the rules. Obviously, they don't allow, factorial and all that stuff. But just using plain mathematics, sometimes, very rarely, there are things that you cannot get to the goal. But the rest of the time, you can. And it happens over and over and over again. Now, if we have a game show where people sit down and are given a random sequence of numbers and a random number to target, and they consistently, through basic math, reach that total, why is it remotely impressive that you found pi, or the first 5 digits of pi, through your random calculate? It's not random. You get to choose when you multiply, when you divide, when you add and subtract. And your entire process of determining what the calculation is, your entire process is based on what you find at the end. And so if you did multiply, divide, plus, minus, boom, 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 and you ended up with 4.2897, well, you'd say, well, that's a non-result. But on those occasions where you get like 3.141592, then you say, this is significant. It's like dealing out a hand of cards. If you dealt the cards a full deck so that each person has 13 cards, what are the odds that someone would get all 13 spades?
Well, pretty low.
Yeah, it's really, really low. It's 1 in, the odds of getting 13 cards of the same suit are 1 in 158,753,389,900. That's the odds. And yet it has happened because people play bridge and people have had perfect bridge hands, which require getting that particular combination. And it's happened more than once where someone's gotten a perfect bridge hand. 1 in 158 billion, despite the fact that there probably haven't been anywhere near that many games of bridge played. And so that's really unlikely, and yet it happens. Right?
Yes.
But what if instead of getting 13 cards of the same suit, you got a different set of 13 cards, a 2 of clubs, a 5 of spades, a 7 of diamonds, an 8 of hearts, a jack of spades, a queen of clubs, a king of diamonds, etc., so that they weren't all the same suit? What are the odds of getting those 13 cards?
The same odds. It's very low.
Exactly the same odds. And the only difference between that one hand, which is a garbage hand in spades or in euchre, not euchre, but spades and bridge, the only difference is that we prioritize them. The bits of cardboard don't know anything. The math doesn't know anything. And so you have this incredibly unlikely outcome that is happening every single game. If you deal an entire deck out to 4 people, the odds of any 13 specific cards, be they 13 of the same suit or 13 nonsensical cards or meaningless cards for the game, the odds are exactly the same, which means in every single game that has ever been played of bridge, every time the cards are dealt, there are 4 people that receive a hand of cards, and the odds against that specific hand is 1 in 158,753,389,900. And that's happening over and over and over again. And what you're doing is finding something that you view as significant, Oh, here's the 5 digits of pi. Ta-da! Oh, here's this thing that I attribute significance to. That's what you're doing when you go through and do this math. I highly recommend you watch Countdown. It's a great game.
Yeah. And do you know what the top 11 most common numbers are?
Well, no, not offhand, no.
1, 2, 0, 3, 5, 4, 10, 000, 6, 8, and 7. You know, there's all kinds of mathematical analysis we can do on texts, but what does that mean? Just because something's against the odds doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I mean, the infinite monkey theorem still stands, right? If you're given an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of typewriters and an infinite amount of time, you'll eventually produce the works of Shakespeare. We know that this is true. So I don't know why, even if your math is correct, why that points to anything other than, oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So how do you get from your math to a God?
Well, the difference is because we're not looking in a billion different books. We're looking in the most read book in the world.
Doesn't matter.
First verse.
Doesn't matter.
And we're looking for the most common universal constant. So we're not looking in billion.
No, you're not.
Same question.
No, if you say if in the first chapter you found pi, that would be significant, and if you found phi, that would also be significant, wouldn't it? So, how many different mathematically significant possible results could you go for?
And how many books have actually been written?
And part
since
of
humans started writing.
Yeah, and you'd have to also look at languages that, you know, it's like there's not a proper letter numerical value for letters in English unless you do like a, you know, the A to Z 1 to 26 type thing. But like, there are other things about this that are predictable, because when you're looking at what is written, you are looking at something that already includes an intended pattern. Actually, it includes multiple intended patterns. The letters form the words that are there as a pattern. So like, if I were to ask you, Alvin, pick a number between 1 and 10. Go ahead.
7.
Yes. And I have a 7 of diamonds, which was already here in my hand, because that is the single most common response to this. I can look like I can predict what's going legitimately. There's no other cards in my hand. 1, 7 of diamonds, because I knew you were going to say 7. Or did I? The truth is I didn't know you were going to say 7, but it was a really, really, really strong likelihood, because when you ask someone to pick a number between 1 and 10, 7 is overwhelmingly the most common number chosen. And you could look like you're prescient, like you're a genius magician, etc., when really you're just playing the odds. And so I will look at your website on your patterns found in the Bible. But I have to say, you would be better off actually sending them to mathematicians if they pay any attention to you, because your particular version of the Bible code, it doesn't seem to be getting any traction. It seems to be just you.
Yeah. And I mean, you still, so how do you get from, given all the books that have been written, including the ones we don't know about, right? Because they no longer exist because they're in the Library of Alexandria. They were books or scrolls that were in pagan temples in Italy, and Christians destroyed them, and other religions destroyed other religion stuff and all that kind of stuff. How do you get to God from this? How do you get there? Just because it's against the odds doesn't mean it didn't happen naturally.
I know we've talked a lot.
You have to also look at the sub patterns.
Okay.
So the same question. The question hasn't changed. How do you get from this to God? It obviously the odds of it happening are right now 100%, right? They did happen. We see the, I'm accepting what you say is true. You see these patterns. What I'm wondering is, how do I get from, oh, look, these are interesting, to, oh, there's actually a God?
By the mathematics, because I've shown it to 579 digits.
So what?
And you also have
again, I'm accepting your math is true. Just because it's against the odds, obviously it happened. So, I mean, so what? It happened. How do you get to God from there?
Well, if you look at all the sub patterns with pi e and alpha, it's a lot more than just pi, and it's in like the trillions that
Same
just
question.
that one pattern occurs.
Same question.
But because it's in one book, in one verse, in one universal constant.
How many books out of all of those that have been written have you done the same analysis to determine that this is unique?
Well, as an example, I looked at a number of classics. I looked at about 20,000 sentences, pseudo sentences, and I was able to find like the first 12. That I was able to find a sentence that had the first 12 patterns.
So 20,000 sentences
you know,
isn't even close to a large number. I said, how many volumes, how many books, and what percentage of that is the total that have been written since then?
See,
well, that's out of the 20 million, I found one in 20 million.
20 million books?
Exactly what you'd expect.
20 million
20
books.
million sentences.
I didn't ask about sentences.
Well, if I
asked about books.
I'd look at it.
I asked how many books.
so I have a question.
Oh, I don't know. It was like 100 books or something.
Oh, 100 books? I've read more than that in the last 5 years. I'd say the last 3 years, but I might be pushing it. So I'm not really impressed by 100 books.
See, the thing is, I'm looking at your thing here. And by the way, you have 100 patterns in Genesis 1:1 that you claim prove divine authorship in the Bible. If Genesis 1:1 didn't fit this pattern, but Matthew 1:1 did, would you have accepted that?
Well, it wouldn't have been as impressive.
Why not?
Well, because Genesis 1:1 is the very first verse.
So you've decided. So first of all, you begin with Genesis 1:1. It's more impressive there because it's the first one. And then you begin with this notion that somewhere else in the Bible, it says God's digits are 3 and 7, and 3 is for the Trinity and 7 is for divine perfection, when there's no evidence of a Trinity and no evidence for divine and no evidence for divine perfection. And then you're like, here's your part of your 100. The number of words in Genesis 1:1 is evenly divisible by 7. Big deal. That's true for every sentence that has 7 words. The number of letters is evenly divisible by 7. Sorry?
Yeah, well, that's one. The first one is 1 in 7.
No, it's not.
The first 28 are like 1 in 20 million or something.
No. You don't get to just so what are the odds that I would have been born in Kansas City, Missouri?
100%.
Well, like 1 in
now it's 100%. But you don't get to say it is unlikely that Matt was born in Kansas City, and unlikely that he was born on March 31st, and unlikely that he was born at this time, and unlikely that he was born in this year, and unlikely that he was born in these parents. And you don't get to multiply those together to say that it was astronomically improbable that Matt would be born when he was born. That's what you're doing with this. You are butchering math, which is why nobody's paying attention to this. And even if you were correct, even if all of the things you say about Genesis 1:1 is correct, that still does not in any way demonstrate that it was authored by a God. In fact, if that were enough to conclude that God is the author of this, then that would be concrete evidence of God, in which case God could just come forward and say, yep, I authored it. So why is God still hiding? If you found God, you've sussed through Genesis 1:1 and you've found proof of God, why is God still absent and hiding? And why do you have to call around to try to get attention on a website that nobody's paying attention to? Why is God punking you?
Well, that's what the 20 verses at the beginning say, is that God's telling us that they're hidden.
If he's hidden, how come you found him and I can't?
Well, I'm not the only one that found him. I mean, I got some of them from other people.
I'm not convinced. How do I know that you found him? I have yet to see any evidence that somebody has found God. He's playing the best game of hide and seek ever.
Of the three of them.
A lot of them came from Dr. Ivan Painter 150 years ago.
100 years ago, according to your website, unless your website's 50 years old or typoed. But since you misspelled atheist, maybe it is.
No, 100 years ago.
Yeah, and you still haven't demonstrated, and like Matt pointed out, the odds of him being born on the day to the parents in the place are astronomically against, and yet 100% chance that it happened because it did. So this goes back to my question of let's assume your math is correct. How does that get you to anything? Because we've written enough books of varying lengths to include, because the Bible is a bunch of smaller books.
I need a mathematician because I just got down to the end of the list. Are you the one that added like the ones closer to 100, like 99, 98, 9, and 100?
Yeah, I did most of the latter ones. Yeah.
Sure. So this latter one, you say Genesis 1:1 is found in phi. You do realize that phi is an irrational number that doesn't repeat, and so you'd be able to find it's a matter of factly, it would be more miraculous to not find the 7 words in Genesis 1:1 within the digits of phi than to actually find it, right?
Right. And same with pi.
But in every case, I've done the mathematics to show that it's improbable.
No, it's not improbable. It is
actually
no, sir. It is virtually certain. That is the point. If you were to start flipping a coin right now, how many heads in a row would you need to get before you thought something fishy was going on?
Oh, well, maybe 10 or so.
Sure. But if you flipped a coin over and over again 10 billion times, do you think you'd hit on 10 heads in a row at some point?
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you do understand this. And that's why 10 heads, by the way, bigger than 7 words. Not surprising at all that we find Genesis 1:1 in pi. Did you look to see if you could find Genesis 1:2 in pi?
I bet you can.
Well,
And I bet you didn't, because you seem to put priority on this first verse. Yeah.
And hey, do you think you could find the first sentence in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit in pi?
you would not find all 100 type patterns. No.
No, I didn't ask that. I asked, do you think you would find the first sentence of The Hobbit in either pi or phi or any other irrational number?
If you look far enough, yes, because of
Oh,
Congratulations.
Okay. That's our
right.
point.
So I thank you for the call, Alvin. I have nothing more to say. It's interesting. I'll take a look at the website, but
Math is weird.
You need to get
numbers.
some mathematicians to look at this, and it is what I thought it was from the beginning, which is another Bible code, just not an equidistant letter one. In this case, instead of looking for equidistant letters, you're saying, let's pull up every digit of pi, and I will scan through the entirety of it to see if I can find this particular string. Well, congratulations. Just like if we put every monkey on earth banging on typewriters ad nauseum until the end of time, they will write your Bible word for word.